Why we haven't been back to space. A story of fear and self-fulfilling prophecies. Space is the promised land for all of mankind, and I say that with a lot of importance because I understand as humans, we don't put much attention on things that aren't in our day-to-day life. As long as the bus shows up at 8 a.m., we know that we can get to work or school at 9. We, as the non-ruling class of our country, home, town, whatever, we are not obligated to care about what fuel the bus takes or what the shortest route to save on said fuel. That is the responsibility of the ruling class, aka the oligarchy, aka the politicians. But if you ask the older generation, it is not just the concern of them, it is the concern of everybody, and as well as the young, because in their eyes, we are their savior. The young are the ones who are going to fix their failing economies and find this all-encompassing fuel that's going to somehow subsidize their new missile development so that they can send it off to whatever country they think benefits them. Now, since the great catastrophe of 2020 and the pandemic that followed, things for spacefaring countries have changed quite a bit. And one of those things are the Artemis Accords, which is a piece of document that was written up by NASA and Argentina, Colombia, India, Mexico, Romania, Ukraine, Australia, Czech Republic, Israel, New Zealand, Rwanda, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Ecuador, Italy, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, the United Kingdom, Brazil, France, Japan, Poland, Singapore, the United States, Canada, Germany, Luxembourg, the Republic of Korea, and Spain. These countries came together to write what is the Artemis Accords, which for all purposes is a rather good piece of paper. And it lays out terms of policies for non-included countries to take part in any sort of spacefaring scientific thing that they want to take part in. Here in a few minutes, we'll go into what the Artemis Accords are actually made up of. But before we do that, I want to explain to you this. The Artemis Accords is a big jerk off for the United States government, because the thing is, this is simply a piece of paper that was written up by NASA and the prior mentioned countries and are just saying to the rest of the world, hey, you want to work with us? Better follow our rules, buddy. And the thing is, this is a very good paper. All of the rules that are inside of the Artemis Accords are prior articles or documents that have already been established by the UN. Mainly the one I'm speaking about here is the Outer Space Treaty, which was brought to the UN in 1967 by the USSR, Great Britain, and America. At this time, it was understandable that these three would make the rules of engagement in space because who else was in space at that time? But in the Outer Space Treaty, there is 5 documents that make up what it is, and I'm going to read them to you now. The Registration Convention, the Liability Convention, the Rescue Agreement, as well as a agreement to have a meeting with the caboose. I will put the documents up here on screen so you can take a look and read them if you're interested in doing that, but I will give you the general gist. So the Registration Convention makes sure that every country that is a part of this will report to the UN Secretary General about any missions or explorations that are done in space. The Liability Convention just pretty much says, if your rocket turns into a missile, you will repair the damage done to other people as well as probably yourself, assumedly. And then the rescue agreement says if you are a part of the Outer Space Treaty, every country that is a part of it will try their hardest to save a stranded astronaut if possible. And then the last one is an agreement to meet with the caboose. And the caboose is the Committee of Peaceful Use of Outer Space. What I just read to you was the Outer Space Treaty and the conventions that define what the Outer Space Treaty does. What I'm going to helpfully explain now is how America is using a document that was made to help all of humankind and stop us from going into nuclear war to now exploit other countries and gain infinite resources from space. Yeah, we're the fucking empire. You would have to be crazy to think that China is on the same level as the United States when it comes to space travel. But if you've been paying attention to geopolitical politics, fancy words, you would have noticed Trump's 50% tariff on China, as well as these new Artemis Accords, which, if you're watching this video and I've titled it what I think I have, you probably didn't hear about the Artemis Accords. But these are both a slap in the face of any prior relations or future endeavors we were hoping to have with China. I'm not going to waste your time explaining how tariffs can affect the Chinese space program. If they can't sell missile technology, they can't send people into space. But the Artemis Accords is a bit more of a funny one because besides the very clear fact that it was only brought to fruition in response to Chinese growing satellite infrastructure for their upcoming international lunar research stations with countries like Russia, Azerbaijan, Egypt, and Pakistan. Zindabad! Zindabad! And their continuous development of new to them forms of rockets and missiles, as shown from their January 11th, 2007 destruction of the decommissioned FY-1C weather satellite, which was destroyed with a kinetic warhead launched from the KT-2 orbital launch vehicle, which is a fancy way of saying a missile with extra thrusters to launch heavy things. So I'm doing the research for the video right now, and this is a bit unrelated, but I am seeing that the KT-2's first propellant stage is based off of the DF-31, a missile unveiled in 1999 with a top speed of around Mach 5 to Mach 10, which is rather good. Like, that's not bad. But the son of the DF-31 is the DF-41, those big f***off missiles that you always see in every Chinese March parade. That motherfucker, I have to cut out how much I'm going to swear in this, but oh my god. It was released in 2017 and has a top speed of Mach 25. Holy shit. This is all cool and stuff until you realize even if they strapped the DF-41 engine onto the KT-2, the older missile, which weighed a grand total of about 88,000 pounds and could reach a hypothetical speed of around maybe Mach 10, would barely be reaching the standard that was set by the Apollo 11 rocket, which was 15 tons heavier at 110,000 pounds and reached a velocity of Mach 32. Holy Wherever there are big developments happening that the government is funding, you can bet your bottom dollar that it is happening for either weapons or resources. And that is why China is racing to get to the stars like we once did. They see that in the stars lies untapped potential, unlimited resources, floating rocks that have the ability to collapse the world economy, and best of all, it is promised to all of us. So I would like to start this section off by explaining to you the process in which a country decommissions a satellite. And as I stated before, China has a much more American approach to it than you would think. So their shoot and go boom method is quite cool, and to my unknowledgeable mind seems like it would be more than acceptable to do, especially since I know how America and most of the world does it. If they have a satellite, instead of launching and go boom, which is very cool, they will either turn the thrusters and whatever fuel they have left towards Earth and then push to where they're just on the outside of the planet. And this is called the graveyard zone. And the graveyard zone is, I'll put a picture up of it. It's just full of satellites. It looks like goddamn India out there. And I feel like that's worse than making things explode, because the second method that America also uses is instead of turning the thrusters to Earth, They full satellite, turn the thrusters to space, and then go into the planet. And they burn up on reentry, and with all the science, they get to calculate where it'll land very specifically. And that's good, but what's the difference between blowing it up first and having those small particles come down? So if you have even half a brain, you'll see 2 out of the 3 options that I have proposed to you guys of how to dispose of a satellite. 2 of them directly go against the liability convention, and then the third one I personally think is filthy and is definitely not the right process to do it, because if that picture was any help, the graveyard zone is a disgusting piece of humanity and is something that we should be putting effort in towards cleaning. The reason I compare these two is because America is like the older brother to China. He has been there, done that. He is not concerned with going to the moon. Or is he? Because the thing is, I am lying to you. Here in Section 9, Preservation of Outer Space Heritage of the Artemis Accords, and Section 10, Space Resources, America and her allies lays out the preservation of historical landings and the terms of using Moon, Mars, comet, and asteroid resources. I'm not so sure you caught that, but in the same document that uses wording like can benefit all of humankind, why is America laying out how countries are allowed to extract resources on which would have now been their own plot of land, and as well as where they're allowed to land? I am sorry, space is not the jurisdiction of America. This is a vast and gross overstep of America's political power. And the thing is, why would these countries choose to listen to America, especially when they're writing what is the equivalent of the reverse Magna Carta, where they're giving themselves damn near all of the political power in space? Is it because we have the best rocket infrastructure? Is it because we've been the most advanced when it comes to everything space for the last 80 years, as I just told you from the Apollo 11? And if any of these countries have any hope of ever making it to space, they have to side with America. And that is why America wrote these accords. I don't want to make this whole video, I love China, China's great, why are we hating on China? But the thing is, as I've stated from the beginning of the video, the young are the savior of the old. They are looking to us to solve their broken economies and find this energy source that's going to do whatever. But the thing is, America might not be that guy. They might not be the ones to discover it. If the kid that discovers that energy source or the way to take us to the stars is Chinese, then why are we stifling that kid? Why are we stopping the future who will save us from our burning planet, not allowing these very smart individuals over here to have the same growth as us simply because they're Chinese? That seems a bit xenophobic, doesn't it? I like Trump. I hate to admit that, but there are some things that he does that I'm just like, yeah, I think that is the right thing. But his tariffs on China, as well as his buying Gaza Strip, is fucking retarded. And the reason I say this is because back in the 90s, we allowed China to overtake us in being the production capital of the world. And ever since then, shit has gone cheap. It's good for us, for the everyday people. And the thing is, if that's what it takes for the world to flourish as a whole, because if things are cheaper, that means that poor kid who might be the one to develop that new fuel source, he doesn't have to care nearly as much about what shoes he's wearing when he goes to school because they're cheap. The good shoes are cheap. So he doesn't have to think about, oh, I care about how I look and my fashion. He can think, oh, maybe I want to be smart. Maybe I want to go play sports or something like that. But as it is right now, kids around the world are stifled by the American government from being our savior. And Trump, you and your fucking 50% tariffs can suck a fat cock, because the thing is, it took us, what, 30, 40 years to cement them being the production capital of the world, and you want to change that in 4 years at max? We'll see. But the thing is, we have gave China inferior technology, inferior everything, and yet somehow these ingenuitive bastards have managed to make better AI models, which considering ours cost billions and theirs cost millions is insane. They have a better 5G network, as well as having comparable missiles, and on top of that, a modern public transportation, and their people don't have to go into debt just so that they can have healthcare. You know what? Fuck it. I'm Chinese.